Being a barista changed the trajectory of my life. And if you are or have been a barista, it's probably changed yours too. And if you're thinking about being a barista, then you should probably listen to this. Hi, my name is Stefania. I'm a former barista living in Chicago, and I will be 24 years old next week on February 18th. We may have just met, or you may know me from these.
Hey, we're out of almond milk for the
Ding!
today.
Which
makes no sense.
I've
got a vanilla latte for Richard on the honey lavender latte.
But this was not the beginning. This wasn't even close to the beginning. This was like the beginning of the after party. The beginning started here 8 years ago in 2016. I was freshly 16 years old. I wandered into my local Target and threw my application in. This is back when we had paper applications still. I got called into an interview on March 5th, 2016, and was given the cashier position at Target on the spot. As the hiring manager that just interviewed me was signing my offer letter, she stopped for a second, looked at me, and said, "Do you have any interest working at Starbucks?" Because there was a Starbucks inside of that Target. I'm sorry, I left that part out. There's a Starbucks inside the Target. So she asked me if I had interest in being a Starbucks barista versus working as a cashier. And at that time, again, I was 16, so I really didn't drink coffee, and all I knew about Starbucks was frappuccinos and cake pops. So naturally, my 16-year-old reaction was like, hell yeah, I'll go be a coffee maker. To which the hiring manager responded, barista. And I was like, yeah, that's the same thing. Within 2 weeks, I had my green apron on, I was behind the counter, and within a month after that, I was a certified barista. I got my PIN, I got my little certificate. I should probably go find that. It's somewhere up in my closet. By May of 2016, I was a full-blown barista. I knew what to do, where to do it, when to do it. I was opening and closing the store down by myself. I made friends inside of Target, made friends inside of Starbucks. I was having a jolly old time. The one thing that wasn't great though was that quickly after I started, I realized that there were a lot of benefits, Starbucks related benefits that I was missing out on working at a Target Starbucks versus a standalone Starbucks, a corporate Starbucks. Corporate Starbucks, so standalone Starbucks stores, offer their partners, baristas, a plethora of benefits. Say what you want about the company, and I've said a lot too, but they really do have some great benefits, especially for part-time employees. Yes, I will drink the Kool-Aid on that one. They sometimes have higher starting pay, stock options, insurance benefits, partner discount numbers, markouts, and that's just to name a few. At Target Starbucks, you are technically under the Target umbrella, so they license Starbucks products. So as a Target Starbucks barista, I'm not a Starbucks barista. I am a Target employee who happens to work inside of the Starbucks as a barista. So I got Target benefits, Target pay, which isn't bad, but it's just not the same. Towards the beginning of 2017, so this is like maybe 10 months after I started at this Target Starbucks, I threw my application into a corporate Starbucks. Well, actually a few, and eventually I got a call back. I wanted the benefits. I wanted the discount numbers, the partner numbers, and truth be told, as much as I loved my Target Starbucks store, there was a lot of drama, most of it instigated by my Starbucks manager, which wasn't fun. So even though I had a great time, had a great experience, and learned a lot at that store, I was ready to peace out, move on, and get some partner numbers. And I did. And I was a 240-3005, okay? And don't try to use those numbers. They are inactive, okay? So in the spring of 2017 is when I started at my first corporate Starbucks, got my partner numbers, got all that, got all situated. It was wonderful. I was finally getting a free breakfast sandwich per shift, as I deserved, if I do say so myself. If you've followed me, subscribed to me, and seen some of my Starbucks stories, believe it or not, this was the store that most of those stories came from. Yes, this store was batshit crazy. This is where my bad store manager was from, the one who's always writing the schedule, and this is where I was screamed at in the back room from a soon-to-be shift manager who was just on a power trip. The list goes on, and I was a senior in high school at the time, so I was working quite a bit for also being in high school full-time. I will say, though, that I think at 17, this was the point in my life after I'd started at that corporate Starbucks store where I think I was finally being exposed to a lot of different people. And I say that because mostly my Starbucks crew at that store was made up of the girls, the gays, and the theys, and we loved that. But I worked with partners from the Black community, Spanish community, LGBTQIA community. I worked with Jehovah's Witnesses. I worked with so many different flavors of people. And I feel like that was the moment where the world started to really open up to me, and I started to realize, like, wow, there's a whole world out there filled with different people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different traumas, different families of origin. Like, we are all so different, but so similar at the same time. It's weird. Because I became aware of all of these different things now and seeing what people's stories were based upon who they were and where they came from, I think this is where in my life I really started to learn empathy and understanding for other types of people in the world, people who are not me or my immediate family, right? It taught me empathy and understanding on a whole other level, and I would go as far as to say that it taught me how to not only be awake and aware, but conscious. And that's quite a big thing for a 17-year-old, a fresh 17-year-old at that point, to learn. I think it's also worth noting that the people at the store were also of all different ages too. Like, they had different responsibilities, they had different things going on in their lives that was so different from me being a senior in high school. Hearing about their responsibilities and what their lives are like, it just, I don't know, it just contributed to this overall empathy thing. You know, I eventually left Starbucks in 2020 and I went over to my local cafe here in Chicago that I've talked about before. But, you know, what I just explained to you, that only grew and progressed over time as I kept working with different crews, different people, different cafes. That didn't ever stop. Now the Chicago cafe. Woo! Okay, I loved this cafe, don't get me wrong. I really, truly did. And I've said this before, that I think that I've learned probably about 90% of my coffee knowledge at that cafe. Love it. Mwah. Can't say enough good things about it. However, it was positioned in a neighborhood here in Chicago that became drastically different post-pandemic. Although I loved that cafe, it wasn't always the safest at times. You know, we had a lot of homeless in the area, and that doesn't bother me, except when they would pose a threat to the cafe. That's, you know, when it would bother me. But we had instances where homeless men and women would come in and they would threaten our customers and they would demand free food and free drink. My manager, he had a heart, okay? He was like, if they're gonna come in and ask for, you know, food, ask for whatever, just give them a cup of coffee, like just send them on their way. But we were specifically instructed to never give out food. So, you know, that would lead to some scenarios where there would be an escalation in our cafe because we said no, and then we would have to call for help. And, you know, it was different. It was, again, different. Now, like I said, I think I learned all of that good, juicy empathy and understanding and compassion at Starbucks, but I think the Chicago cafe is where I really, truly learned about privilege. I realized at the time, you know, I was a broke college student, I was finishing my degree, and I was barely making ends meet, but I did it, I managed, and I realized how much of a privilege just being able to make ends meet is. Being a barista taught me how to be a better human, and I've talked about this before on my channel in another video, which I will link somewhere up here, but being a barista taught me about privilege and discrepancies and differences, and how those things that separate us and make us different, we're, as humans, as individuals, we're not, like I've said, we're not that different. We're not that far away from that person that we view as so different from us. You know, it's turned me into somebody who has not only become educated on those matters, but doesn't shy away from it. When those conversations begin, I don't shy away from them. I feel I am educated enough at this point to contribute to those conversations, but I don't think I would be educated enough had I not been exposed to it directly. It's super easy to turn a blind eye or to not develop certain awarenesses when you're not being exposed to those things firsthand. And some people never get that exposure and they never learn some of these things, which I don't know if that's bad or good, but it's just a fact. I've also talked about this in my other videos quite a bit, that, you know, working in food service, retail, hospitality, people do treat you how they view you, and they view you as a worker, a service worker. You get exposed to a lot of humanity and a lot of different types of people. You interact with different types of people. You understand how they respond to things and what triggers them. And you kind of just figure out how to navigate humans. I'm somebody that tends to resort to humor whenever things, you know, go awry. Take a look at my channel, why don't ya? No, but seriously, that's always kind of been my thing. I've always resorted to humor in just any situation that it's appropriate. And I'll never forget the first time that I resorted to humor while solving a angry customer issue. I don't even remember what the issue was, but I remember I kind of for the first time, and this is going back to I think like 20, well, had to have been 2016, I used my personality and I used my humor and I tried to be personable when resolving an issue. And I'll never forget how good it felt when the customer who was angry 5 seconds ago responded very well. And I realized, oh, okay, well, people do respond well to humor and wittiness and all that. So that just started to kind of become my thing over time. I was always just like kind of like the cafe silly goose, I don't know. But I developed this like working personality that was super outgoing and talkative and upbeat and positive. And eventually that sort of blanket that I created for myself for my work personality eventually was like absorbed into my person and became my personality all around. Being a Starbucks barista and just being a barista in general, I think that really brought out some personality traits and things that I didn't feel comfortable showing around my friends and my family, but I felt comfortable sharing it around my coworkers and random strangers that I was serving. I felt accepted for my personality. I felt accepted for who I was, and people responded and received me very well in that way. And remember, I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, working in a coffee shop, 16 through 21. And those are very developmental years in terms of like personality and adulting and responsibility and maturity. And that entire time, I'm in a coffee shop working with and serving people who are out of the box and sometimes out of pocket. That really does something to you. I do think that being a barista, like I said, made me more extroverted. And I also do credit it for the reason I think that I'm comfortable being in front of a camera like this, because I think the first time I set up my camera, my thought process there was, well, okay, if I can do this and like be outgoing and talk to a bunch of different people every day, then I can do it in the comfort of my own home, talking to a bunch of imaginary people. They were imaginary at first, okay? When I first started off, I had like no subscribers. Now you guys aren't imaginary, you're real people. Hello. But now being a barista changed the trajectory of my life. Everything that we just talked about, everything I learned, every part of me that I developed, that was only 50% of it. That was only half, okay? Now we're gonna get into the second half of how and why being a barista changed the trajectory of my life. It also changed my life because there was a day back in 2020 when we were all in quarantine where I just decided to be a little silly goose, okay? A little silly goofy. And I posted a TikTok. Mind you, I had no followers, no subscribers. I didn't set forth to be a content creator. It just kind of happened. So I posted this like POV style video, this TikTok video, and a lot of people around that time were doing like, POV, you're a bartender. POV, you work at this place, whatever. So I was like, I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring and I'm gonna represent the baristas, okay? So I did that. So I made this POV style video of this old like customer interaction that I had at Starbucks, and I went to bed, I woke up, and it had 80,000 views on it. The people demanded a part 2, and then they demanded a part 3. So you know what I did? I gave them a part 2, and I gave them a part 3, and I gave them part 30, and I gave them a part 50, and now we're probably at like part 1,000, and fast forward 4 years, and we're here. The followers kept pouring in, and I just kept posting on TikTok, and again, like I was in college, and it was quarantine, what else was I gonna do? I was just in my free time for fun at that point.
I was just door dashing and doing Uber Eats to make extra money, so I was like, well, I'm just gonna post on TikTok in my free time. This is fun. A few months after that, I ended up getting into YouTube, and I was like, wait, YouTube is kind of fun. I should make some long form videos about this. I started playing around with recording on my phone and video editing, and I started off on iMovie. Okay, I wasn't no Scorsese out here, but I had interest and I had motivation, and above all, I had time because of COVID. From that point, for the next 4 years, up until this very moment, I have absolutely beat my head up against the wall, carving out this sort of barista coffee persona, brand, if you will, for myself. During the first few years, I guess I never really knew how to inject more of me into my content. I think people very quickly fell in love with this like barista character that I was playing, and it was fun, it was cute, but I think there was always that part of me that was like, oh, but like people don't know me. I had a lot of imposter syndrome and self-doubt at the beginning. I mean, I was handed this following, this opportunity, and it was an opportunity I never asked for or wished for, and I don't mean for that to come across any which way, but it's just, it's true. And that's the reason why I'm here today, and I have grown followers and subscribers, and I've shared my love for coffee. I mean, even after hanging up my apron for the very last time, that my barista skills and my love for coffee didn't get hung up with that. Through sharing coffee and sharing funny customer stories and storytelling, I've built up now this community that I'm so grateful for. Fast forward now, years later, I'm not using iMovie anymore. I'm using Premiere Pro, and you know, I'm getting kind of good at it. I still have a lot to learn, and I know I have a long way to go, but I'm at least acknowledging the fact that I started from the bottom, now we here, okay? I'm just recognizing my progress. I can honestly say now, being on the other side of things, that content changed my life. And the thing is that at the end of the day, had I not been a barista, had I not learned coffee, I wouldn't have this sort of content to post about, to speak to connect with you over. And I know that there are probably millions of people out there that love coffee, they're coffee lovers, they're baristas themselves that we just haven't reached yet. And they're gonna join this community one day. I know that we're gonna find each other, but for the time being, I'm very grateful for this little community that we've built up so far. I look back at every day that I used to leave Starbucks, those bad, nasty days where like people were just nasty all day, and I would leave crying and just so sad, like, oh my gosh, like, why are people treating me this way? All this stuff. I wish I could go back and like tap myself on the shoulder and be like, hi past me, hi. This is gonna be a highly performing video one day. That little interaction you just had, that's gonna be a video, and it's gonna pop off, and it's gonna be great. Dry your tears. We gonna have some stories to tell one day. Hindsight is 2020, and 2020 is the year that my entire life changed after hitting upload for the first time. The first video came to me when I was door dashing during the day, just, you know, had a lot of free time on my hands, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this would be such a funny story to tell. And I honestly do believe that ideas have a shelf life. I believe that, you know, if you get an idea and you don't act on it, it's gonna go to the next person who will. And I was like, this is my idea. I'm acting on it, and I did, and now we're here. Starbucks from the very beginning changed my life. Had I never said yes to being a barista versus, you know, continuing forth with being a cashier instead, what I originally applied for and came in for, I would not be in front of you today. I wouldn't have the stories and the recipes and the things to share with you that I do share with you now. Maybe, just maybe, we would have had a chance to connect over something else, but I don't know what that something else is, and that's for me in another dimension to worry about. In this dimension, we connect over coffee, yay! I don't know what's gonna happen next in my journey. You know, I already know what has happened and what has gotten me up to this point, but I don't know what's going to happen from here forth. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately. If you do, hit me up, I'll buy it from you. I got $2. But I do know one thing, and that's I was given this opportunity yet again to continue building and growing my community on a different platform and connecting with more people and finding more coffee lovers and baristas. And I want to continue to grow and foster that community and cultivate this wonderful community of caffeinated little espresso beans. Yes, espresso beans, that's so cute. I don't just want to always be known as a Starbucks barista, or like, oh, it's the, you know, Starbucks barista girl. Like, I'm so much more than that, and I want to share that with people that see me for me and don't just see me for the apron I used to wear. Does that make sense? And I do hope that you will stick around to at least find out. There are so many wonderful and developmental things that came out of me being a barista, and as much as I joke and I tell these crazy Karen stories and these crazy manager coworker stories, I would not take those years back for anything. Like, you could offer me $1 bajillion and I would still be like, nah. Well, for $1 bajillion, I don't know. Maybe for $1 bajillion, but like $1 million, no. At the end of the day, I am who I am today because of being a barista. I was raised by the siren, and I'm proud of it. Without those stories and those experiences, I wouldn't be able to share them. And most importantly, I wouldn't be able to share them with you. So thank you, Starbucks. Thank you, Chicago Cafe. And thank you for being here. All right, well, be nice to your baristas, and I will see you soon. Mwah.